The Cavs regular season has officially come to a conclusion. It's been a great year, but look, it is time to lock in for the playoffs. We have the play-in this week, so the Cavs will have an opportunity to rest and figure out what their matchup's going to be in about a week for the first round of the playoffs. I wanted to take a little time today, though, to kind of talk through how I feel about all of these potential matchups in the East. And who I am fearing the most, just some general thoughts as we prepare for what's hopefully a long and substantial playoff run. Fingers crossed there. But yeah, just wanted to kind of walk through just my thoughts on all of those matchups. So obviously the team I fear most in the East, and I think you're probably crazy if you do not fear this team the most in the East, is the Boston Celtics. To give a recap of our matchups against the Celtics this season, we've been 2-2 against them. We had the first game a loss, then win, then loss, then win. All pretty close games. Like the first loss, we lost by 3. The first win, we won by 4. The next loss was a loss by 7, and then that final win is a win by 7. So very hard fought, close games. When we had that game 3 loss there against them in the season, immediately after is when we made the trade for DeAndre Hunter. And I think in a lot of ways they did that to prepare specifically for the Boston Celtics, because I think it was very clear in that game back in early February that we didn't have an answer for them in a lot of ways. Obviously out of all the teams in the East, I think the Celtics are the most versatile team. They have just a large amount of guys off the bench that can just go off offensively on any given night. And also a lot of guys that can defend multiple positions. When you think about, teams in the past who have had random guys off the bench that could go off on any given night, I do think back to some of those Warriors teams where they would have like a Sean Livingston or someone who could just go off in the playoffs when you're preparing for everyone else. You were preparing for Steph, you were preparing for Clay, you were preparing for Draymond, but you weren't preparing for random guy off the bench to drop 25, 30 points on you. And I do feel like the Celtics sometimes can have that capability. Probably, I wouldn't say to the level of the Warriors, but in general, they have a lot of depth and a lot of talent there. And look, another reason I definitely fear them the most is because I really believe that playoff experience matters. I think when you have guys that have been there multiple times, fought through this together, know what it takes now to win playoff games and also to win a championship, I think that really becomes a factor when you get into these close games and you get into these series that could push to 7-game series. I think experience matters a lot in those moments, and the Celtics, more than anyone else in the East, are very prepared to handle that. I don't think we talk enough also about how long it takes to really become what the Celtics have become and how much they have battled together to get to where they are. Jason Tatum was drafted by the Celtics in 2017. Jaylen Brown was drafted in 2016. That is nearly a decade at this point that those guys have been working to get to the point where they were able to win the title last year. I feel like, it is a instant gratification league and we want results immediately, especially when you start seeing a spark in your team. You want to see those results immediately, but they are a perfect example of just how long it takes to really get there and be able to actually contend. And then in comparison, when you look at the Cavs, like Darius drafted in 2019, that's the farthest back we go. Mobley drafted in 2021. Jarrett Allen came over in 2021, and then the Donovan trade was in 2022. So this is a relatively new group in comparison to when you look at a group like the Celtics, who had to be battle tested time and time again. So the fact that the Cavs are in the position that they are in, I think is really impressive. And I think gets overlooked because people do want to see those results immediately. And look, I am with you. I also want to see results immediately. But I think it's good sometimes to step back and look at those things and be like, okay, yeah, it didn't happen overnight for them, just like it's not going to happen overnight for us. But, now we have a couple of years of playoff experience under our belt, and hopefully that allows this Cavs group to continue to chip away as well. The next team I want to talk about that is my number 2 most feared team in the East, which might surprise some people, I think, is the Milwaukee Bucks. So recap of our games against them this season. We are 4-0 against them on the season. So a 1-point win, a 2-point win, a 23-point win, and a 12-point win. So a little bit all over the place there in terms of general domination. But I think the reason I am more fearful of a team like the Milwaukee Bucks than some of the other teams in the East is because star power scares me in these important moments. Kind of like what I was talking about with the Celtics, where I think experience matters in these situations. I think Giannis being who he is makes me more nervous than some of these other teams that don't necessarily have that level of star power that's been here, done that. I don't know what's going to be happening with Dame still. I feel like they've been wishy-washy about it. My gut is telling me there's no way he comes back, just considering what he has been going through with the DVT, which is a very, very serious blood clot. So I feel like he's not going to be there. But if he were to, that would add another level of like a really experienced star player that would make me more fearful in the playoffs than some other guys. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Bucks, even though they've handled them pretty well this season, obviously 4-0. I think, Giannis being who he is and having the experience that he's had in this league is something to be, just weary of in general and to take very seriously. The next up, I have actually the New York Knicks. So we are also 4-0 against them this season. Looks like a 6-point win, nearly a 30 to 40 point win, 19-point win, and a 6-point win. The Knicks are lower on this list than a team like the Bucks because I think the Knicks have a really strong starting lineup, but I have them below a team like the Bucks because I think their bench is pretty rough, pretty terrible in general. And you can tell that when those starters have to come out of the game, the Knicks really start to struggle and show a lot of their weaknesses. And when you are in a playoff series, you're going to have to go to your bench. And I think that's going to be kind of their kryptonite in the playoffs in general. So I just don't think they have the depth to win a 7-game series in my personal opinion. I also think there's gonna they're higher on the list than this next team I'm going to talk about because there are some lingering feelings I still have about, 2 years ago, the way they handled us in the playoffs, 4-1, pretty much complete domination other than the one game that the Cavs were able to pull out at home. So for that, I still have to tip my hat to them in a way and give them the respect that they deserve. But yeah, they're lower on the list for the depth reasons. The fourth team I have is the Indiana Pacers, which, I actually considered in a world putting them higher up as a team I fear than the Knicks because we are 1-3 against the Pacers this season. Loss by about 15. We had a win by 10, a loss by 2, and then the double overtime loss that just happened. I don't really count that game because it was the scrubs out there who were up by like 30 at one point and were taking care of business, and then they just completely blew it. That game doesn't matter and can't count towards anything, but it is very fascinating to see that we are 1-3 against them on the season. And they are a team that gives us some trouble here and there, obviously, which is why I have them above the entire next group of teams. However, when it comes to the star power that I was speaking of earlier, that's something that, I just think the Pacers obviously lack when it comes to being afraid of them in the playoffs. And then following, we have the final 5 teams I pretty much have on the same level. The Pistons, the Magic, the Hawks, the Bulls, and the Heat. They all have little things that I think will make them interesting matchups. Like the Pistons have the JB of it all. The Magic, we just had a series again last year. The Hawks, we have we got DeAndre from them. We gave them Karis and George, and they beat us in that playing game in, I want to say that was 2022. And I do, at times fear Trae Young's ability to go off. So I think, that could always be something that you just think about in a series. The Heat have that Heat culture. Spo, you got to respect what he does and what he brings to the table. The Bulls, I'm going to say, I don't really have much on my list of things that would make me nervous about them. But all of those teams in general, I think I would put mostly in the same bucket, just to not have the depth or the star power or just the general talent, to be honest, that the Cavs have to put up in a 7-game series. They might be able to win a game or two, but I don't think when it comes down to it, they would be able to get it done. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Obviously, once we, get over to the West, things will be interesting. I have no idea who's going to come out from there, if it's OKC, if it's Houston, if it's the Lakers, who knows at this point. The Nuggets, it could really go in any direction. I feel more confident in who I know the teams are in the East and what their identity is. I feel like we've been through this now with these groups a few times, and I'm really interested to see how things go. So we got about a week to go until the first round. We'll see who the Cavs will be playing, but just wanted to bring you guys some of my thoughts on what to expect in the Eastern Conference. As always, go Cavs.